Coming up on our next installment of America's Hope, many people gathered in D.C. from the evangelical community for the Pray, Vote, and Stand Summit, sponsored by the Family Research Council. They came together from all walks of life, but like-minded in their faith, to listen to presidential candidates, as well as to talk about things that matter to them. That's on our next installment of America's Hope. Good evening from the nation's capital. I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. Over my shoulder is the United States Capitol. 535 representatives of government work there, and all their supporters, their legislative aides, and their community liaisons. They're all working together to do something for America, and that's legislate our laws. But Congress is in need of a lot of help. Congress is in need of, many people who would say, prayer. And that's what the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit was all about. Praying for members of Congress, praying for the President of the United States, praying for the Supreme Court, and praying for their fellow Americans. We attended that conference and we heard from various people talking about all the things that matter to them, not just from a faith perspective, but a government perspective, as well as a community perspective, to build America up, to make America stand greater than our past, and make America's future one of hope and not disaster. And so we're going to show you some excerpts of that particular conference, Pray, Vote, and Stand, so that we can hear how members of the faith community actually see their role in helping America be stronger, be better. That's next. Let's get to it.
Stand before you today as a candidate for President of the United States because I believe this country's in a lot of trouble. It's never been more important to stand firm, to vote our values, and to pray. We gather today, America is in crisis. Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. So we have to decide right here and right now that Joe Biden will never be reelected as President of the United States, and we're going to elect strong conservative leadership to the White House.
Our country is in a state of decline. This is not a decline that is inevitable. This decline is a choice. This is a choice we're going to make as Americans over the next weeks, months, and years. And it's not going to be enough to just simply manage the decline a little bit better than the people that are currently in power. No, we as Americans must step up to the plate and reverse the decline of our country. And you see it everywhere you look. We now live in a country where families that are doing everything right, working hard, trying to put food on the table for their kids, suddenly have to choose between getting groceries and buying gas. They can't afford a new house or a new car because of the rising prices and the inflation. And that has been inflicted on this country by the people in Washington, D.C., borrowing and spending this country into oblivion. Inflation's robbing families of the American dream, and of course, as they borrow, print, and spend, the elites in Washington can't even control the territorial integrity of our own country. We have an open southern border that is causing millions and millions of people to flood in, allowing fentanyl to infect our cities, and causing the deaths of over 100,000 Americans each and every year. It is humiliating to see, and it is the consequences.
We're in the middle of a national identity crisis right now. Faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared, and that leaves a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. I say this to you as a relatively young person doing what I'm doing now. I'm 38 years old. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1985. I'll tell you, speaking as a member of my generation, what's going on. We are hungry for a cause. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity at a point in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, belief in God, belief in country, belief in self, these things have disappeared. And when you have a black hole in your heart, that is when the poison fills the void.
Because 1 year from now, each of you will vote in the most important election of your lifetimes. Your most important. This is going to be the most important. This election will decide whether America will be ruled by Marxists, fascists, communist tyrants who want to smash the Judeo-Christian heritage, or whether America will be saved by God-fearing, freedom-loving patriots like all of the people in this room. It was God-fearing patriots like you who built this country, and it is God-fearing patriots like you who are going to save our country.
And that's just an excerpt of the speeches made by Republican presidential candidates speaking to their faith-based supporters at the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit. America's Hope continues after the break.
You know what it's going to require for us to get back on the right track? Courage. It's going to require us to understand what our history is. This is a country that was founded on Judeo-Christian values and principles. Our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, says that our rights come from God and not from government. And it is us.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why is that so important? Because for the first time in world history, there was a government structure that actually gave credit to God Almighty for what He gives us. Because our rights don't come from kings. They don't come from a Congress or a parliament. They come from God Almighty. The men that crafted that document, you know, they did it. Listen to this. They crafted a document called the Declaration of Independence before they were independent. Signed it, sealed it, and delivered it to the most powerful king on earth. Before the king said they were free, they declared themselves to be free. That is audacious. That is courage. That is where we come from. And I believe that's why God heard from heaven and said, you know what, this nation's got some problems. I know they got some problems. They got slavery. I know they got some inequalities and they got some struggles, but I can get behind this nation. And at every turn, I will be there to make sure that whatever problem they face, they will come through. And you know, He has. He's been right there with us, holding our hands the entire time. Why? Because there's still a regiment of people in this nation holding on to His hand. Right here in this room, this summit that we're at right now, what we believe in as patriotic Americans who believe in God. Patriotism is not dead. Faith is not dead. And you can best believe God is not dead. And He's still at work in America.
Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm Kelly Wright. I'm joined now by Katy Talento. And we have an inside joke about your name, but we'll leave that alone right now. I do want to ask you, from a more serious perspective, what is going on in America as it relates to health and insurance? People are, it's a pocketbook issue.
It is.
And it may not even come up during the campaign.
Oh, it will.
It will? Okay, that's promising. So what has to be said and done?
Yeah, so most people in America have had to delay care because they didn't have they didn't have enough money to pay for medical care. Many people in America can't afford to use the insurance that they have because they have a deductible that exceeds their savings. And the Wall Street Journal just reported last week that insurance rates, premiums, are going up by 6.5% next year, and that's higher than any increase in the past 10 years. So, early in this century, in the early 2000s, premiums went up very high very quickly, and then they kind of stabilized a little bit, but now we're starting to see that increase happen again. And what happens is the healthcare swamp, as we called it when I was in the White House, the healthcare swamp, the supply chain for healthcare is owned by Wall Street, and they have interests and incentives that are misaligned with the interests and incentives of the American family.
You mentioned that you were working with the White House. What did you do in that role? And was there anything you could have done to prevent what we're now experiencing?
So President Trump did a lot, and he really did. I mean, of course, the first thing that we tried to do was repeal and replace the ACA, and that went down in the Senate. So I think the ACA is here to stay, and it's got a number of subsidies to make insurance more affordable, I guess, if it could be, for some people. But most people get their insurance on the job. And one of the things that President Trump did, and when I was there, you asked what my role was. I was a health advisor on the Domestic Policy Council, so the lead health advisor there. So one of the things that President Trump talked about were drug prices and also secret healthcare prices. It's the only industry where you don't know the price in advance. And by the way, the price that you pay is set by parties that you're not a contract to. You're not party to their contract between each other. So the hospital and the insurance carrier are in a contract together setting the prices that you pay, but you're not a party to that contract. So it's the only industry on earth like that, where you don't know what you're going to pay in advance. You get a bill months after the fact, and that bill could be completely different based on who's paying. So, you get the same procedure from the same doctor at the same hospital, and you pay something totally different, orders of magnitude different, based on whether you're a cash pay patient, you're insured on the job, you're uninsured. All of these different options for healthcare lead to different prices. And that's just not a free market. We Republicans, I think for many years, we were knee-jerk defenders of free market in healthcare. We can't regulate the healthcare industry because, we don't want to mess with the free market. Healthcare is neither free nor a market, okay? There's no prices you can't know in advance. That's not a market. So there's no price competition in this so-called market. And because of that, that's why prices are going up, because they can. The main driver of price gouging in healthcare are hospitals. They're so-called charity hospitals, tax-exempt hospitals, nonprofit hospitals, and they're gouging the American consumer, and they're pretending to be charities, and they're engaging in predatory collections of many, many Americans. 1 in 5 Americans is in medical debt right now. Half of all debt is medical debt. So, this is unsustainable, and it's one of the reasons people are looking for alternatives to insurance, like healthcare sharing ministries, or, there are other purchasing co-ops and really other important innovations out there. Even employers are starting to use innovative insurance products and services, like firing their carrier and firing their pharmacy solution, and using independent vendors that don't have these misaligned incentives, where they're all in league together to help their shareholders.
And how is that working? Because that's a new way of doing things. Is there more integrity in that? And when you find that people from different backgrounds but the same faith, they're more like-minded in trying to care for each other. Is that working?
That's exactly right. And actually, these aren't new. Healthcare sharing ministries have been around for a generation, for decades. And they've grown a lot because in the past 10 years, the Affordable Care Act exempted members of healthcare sharing ministries from that individual mandate to buy insurance that everyone was under. And we're still under, actually. It hasn't been repealed. And so these guys, I think of it like a homeschool co-op for healthcare. Christians are used to doing things together. I think if you come at a healthcare sharing ministry from outside the faith community, it seems really risky and kind of shadowy. Why would you not want a contract guaranteeing coverage, right? Why would you rely on these fellow believers. But we're used to relying on believers. We're used to doing that. As a pregnant woman, you can bank on the fact that you're going to get 5 casseroles delivered to your house. That community is reliable, and we're used to counting on each other.
Yeah, and that's good, because that's actually helping out to actively care for each other, which is really treating each other the way you want to be treated. It's following the golden rule. But it's not just for Christians, it's for other people who want to join in and buy in. Is that correct?
Well, most healthcare sharing ministries are for Christians.
Okay.
There is a Jewish healthcare sharing ministry, and there are also secular healthcare sharing organizations that are not based around religious beliefs. They're based around ethical beliefs. But what you're getting at is healthcare is the most important service that we will ever consume, and we're consuming it at a time when we are the most vulnerable, more vulnerable than we'll ever be, facing those life and death issues. That is not the time that you want some cold insurance bureaucracy owned by Wall Street to be all up in your grill making decisions for your family.
America's Hope continues in a moment. And the population is getting older, not younger. So that means people have gone now into Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. How's that working?
So Medicare is slated to go insolvent in about 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, we've been hearing this sort of sky is falling with respect to Medicare for many decades. But we're getting closer than ever. It used to be, I remember when I first started off as a young health staffer in Washington, Medicare is going to be bankrupt in 30 years. Medicare is going to be bankrupt in 20 years. Now it's 5. So I don't know exactly when it will be bankrupt, but my husband and I are not counting on it being there. We're not counting on Social Security being there. I don't think it's prudent for anyone to count on it being there. I hope it is, but I'm not seeing a lot of responsibility in Congress to make sure of that.
You said something that really struck a chord in me. You're not seeing a lot of responsibility in Congress. That's both sides of the aisle, including the independents. And I have a habit of saying, Katy, that Congress needs some CPR. Not just cardiopulmonary resuscitation, because they do need a heart for the American people, but they need, CPR in the sense of Congress performing responsibly. If they're not performing responsibly, where does that leave people who are watching this interview with you, and they're in dire straits because they fall into that category of having medical debt that they will not foreseeably overcome?
Yeah, well, one thing we learned during the COVID epidemic is that nobody in Washington is coming to save you. And in fact, they might be trying to hurt you, and they might be trying to take away your rights and your security. And so we need to band together. That's really all we can do, is to form communities, like-minded communities, who take care of each other. And that's really our only hope. When you think about Congress, there are more pharmaceutical lobbyists than there are members of Congress. There's about 2 lobbyists for each member of Congress, all 535 of them. And the healthcare industry is the #1 lobbying industry in the country by far. It's almost $1 billion spent on healthcare lobbying. A hospital is the biggest employer in any congressional district. So that's why it's so difficult to change the healthcare swamp. It's so difficult to make structural changes to these problems that will drive down costs. That's why healthcare sharing ministries are such an important option, but other alternatives as well.
All right, so a lot of people might be watching this and we just deflated their hope. And this show is about hope, not pie in the sky kind of hope, but the hope that requires some heavy lifting to get over the despair. And hope is usually born in adversity and conflict. What's hope for the people watching this interview?
So I'll tell you, I have never been more hopeful, because honestly, coming out of this COVID pandemic, more and more people are starting to think for themselves. I think it's really productive and encouraging that we're not being passive participants in the healthcare system anymore. We're not necessarily trusting, the white coat priest to tell us the truth about our health anymore. And people are starting to take responsibility in their own communities. They're growing their own food. They're learning how to be healthy with supplements and sunlight and sleep. And we're realizing, our immune systems are our immune systems. Mm-hmm. We are in charge of our own health. Now, not everybody has the benefit of good health. even if they try really hard, And that's why we need to take care of each other. If you don't have that faith community that you can fall back on, and we need to start thinking about what is the portion of our income that is going to go to our community for this purpose. Long before there was ever government health care, long before there was the Affordable Care Act, long before there was Medicare, there was the church. And there still is the church, and there always will be. That's what Jesus said. So we don't need to despair, and times have been worse than this, and we'll get through it.
Katy, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Yeah. What do you do now?
Right now, I run the Alliance of Healthcare Sharing Ministries, and I also run a company that helps employers save money on their healthcare and for their employees, and I'm a naturopath.
Very good. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Don't be a stranger.
I
Thank you.
won't.
Back with more after this. Right, and joining me now is Alex McFarland, and it's good of you to join us. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. Alex, you have a role as a pastor, you're a minister, you're an educator, so you work a lot with young people in America. Talk to me about your concerns for Generation Z as well as the millennial generation.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Kelly. It's a great, great honor. Appreciate you so much, and have followed your career trajectory for a number of years, and to be with you is really a privilege. But yeah, I care a lot about young people. I was actually a youth pastor for 11 years, and in the last 19 or 20 years, we've done conferences, camps, probably had about 250,000 teenagers in various events over the last 18, 19 years. And Kelly, there's always kind of a moral crisis. What is right, what is wrong, how should I live? But we're living now where there's almost an identity crisis. Not only where am I and who am I, but what am I? And we've got to rediscover. Now, I'm a Christian. I believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ. But even besides the gospel, just you're a human. You're a man or a woman. You're made in God's image. You're in America. You have opportunity. Your life has a purpose. I think we must urgently help kids understand that life is valuable. Their life is purposeful. And we've got to help them come back from the brink of really not only confusion, but hopelessness.
A couple of things come to mind. You said confusion. So where there's confusion, there's usually doubt, and certainly you're uncertain about your future. Then you discussed purpose.
Yeah.
Many children today have not been given purpose because it isn't being taught at home or in school, and in some faith-based institutions as well. So how do you address that so that hopelessness does not enter in and take up permanent residence in our youth?
Well, for one thing, we need to talk about God.
Okay.
And that God exists, and God loves you, and God made you, and your life is not an accident. And we find our ultimate identity and purpose in the Lord. But even on a secular level, as a citizen, one of the great things about America, we had stability, liberty, and prosperity. And even if somebody wasn't overtly religious, they at least felt like they had purpose. Well, I've heard men say, I give my life for my family. But we're in a culture that denigrates marriage and family and traditional values. Or even people said, I've got my bucket list. I want to, buy a house or have a car or have a career. But we're living in a time where America is just denigrated. And capitalism or even materialism. And I'm not saying people should be materialistic, but it's almost like the woke philosophies have deconstructed every safety net that we had, emotionally, physically, certainly spiritually. And people, and young people especially, are very often in this free fall, and they don't even know what is reality. Now, I'm not saying that we find our fulfillment in things, but do you understand, all of the landing points that were once available to us in one way or another have been kicked down.
You're talking about the foundational things that we could go to.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the church or like a or like a counselor or a YMCA or Boys and Girls Club. Talk to me about what you're seeing out there when you talk to the youth of America. What are they saying to you?
They want answers. Here I am, 59, Kelly. Like maybe the most least likely person that youth would seek out, it would seem, and yet every year we do a number of events all year long, and we do camps in the summertime, and they're all full, and we have thousands of kids emailing us. We start clubs called Viral Truth Clubs. And in a Viral Truth Club, we teach leadership, and we teach kids how to lead a club meeting and talk about God and country. And what's encouraging, and I want to give encouragement, is kids, there is still, even though they might come from a broken home, even though they might intuitively know there's got to be more than I've heard about the story. In school, very often it's socialism or moral relativism. And yet they know they were put here for something. There are skills and passions. Maybe kids are good musically or gifted academically or gifted in sports, and they want to do something. And I think kids seek out me and our organization and our events because we believe in hope. We believe you can do something with your life. Now, obviously, it begins with a relationship to Christ. But for this country, and I've got a sound clip, I'm not going to play it, but in all of our camps, imagine you've got 200 kids, and I have them say this: we are the generation who will restore America. Yeah. And I've got recordings of middle schoolers, high schoolers. The light bulb comes on. America is great. America was founded on morals. America is the land of opportunity. You can be born, as I was, in an indigent, poor farm family. And if you're willing to work hard, say your prayers, be diligent, you can become something, right? So we have kids chanting, we are the generation who will restore America. And I've got to believe
I like that.
Liberals would have an aneurysm because those conservative Christian adults are programming the impressionable youth. We're just telling them truth is out there and success is possible, and America is the place where you can not only find yourself, but you can succeed and make a contribution.
Yeah, Alex, I like that because it's putting a positive implant into the mindset of the youth of America. But to me, though, when you say that, it's not even a liberal or conservative thing. If you're putting something positive in a child's life, it's going to reap benefits for everybody, regardless of where they might be politically, but spiritually and foundationally. If they believe they can be better for America, doesn't America become better?
Indeed, of course. And I want to say to everybody watching, because no doubt there are parents, maybe volunteers. I know so many great people that they volunteer to tutor. They volunteer to help kids with their homework. And so many kids, not all, but so many kids, their home life is not what it ought to be. But I just want to say that for everybody out there, the TIME, time, young people's lives are impacted. You don't have to have money. You don't have to be, brilliant, intelligent. Lord knows you don't have to be handsome or pretty. But if you're willing to invest time, kids want relationship. And I just want to encourage people, through your church, through volunteering, through being a friend, being that kindly neighbor, get involved in the lives of young people.
Time. Get involved. I love all of that.
We can all do that.
Because if we invest time, it goes back to that axiom, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Certainly our children are in need of that kind of caring and knowing that we do care about them. And when it comes to that, our kids, I want to talk about the negative in order so that we can accentuate the positive and find that place called hope. Children are experiencing suicide ideation. They're dealing with fentanyl and the opioid crisis. They're dealing with crime and violence, human trafficking, sexual trafficking, child exploitation. Okay, that's the list.
Right.
And then you talked about the identity crisis. So they might even be thinking, I don't even know who I am or what I am. How do they find hope and their true selves through those experiences that they're exposed to?
Well, you know, in a world without God, there is no transcendent ultimate purpose. It's just bad stuff happens. You survive till you die. But in the world that America was built on, the Christian worldview, no, there's a purpose. And hard times don't mean God has abandoned me, but it shows me how much I really do need to lean on the Lord. And if I'm willing to take my pains and my problems, we can begin to see how God works. We can begin to grow, and we can be equipped to come alongside somebody down the road. I tell kids, look, the stuff you're going through, it doesn't mean that God doesn't love you or there's not hope for tomorrow. There is. But someday you're going to come alongside somebody and you're going to say, you know what? I understand. I was there, and let's keep on pressing forward because you're going to make it. Totally random here, but people ask, how can I begin to get involved in the lives of kids? We've done a thing in hundreds of churches where we teach kids how to drive. Now, not legally like the driver's test, but we let kids get in a car and go back and forward in a parking lot a little bit. But I teach kids how to change a spare tire. Now, that might sound so basic and so elementary, but, it's daunting. A lot of the kids nowadays, unlike maybe our generation, we rode bikes without a helmet. We knew what it was to scrape your knee and the rough
Or
and
fall on your head.
Exactly. But there's a lot of kids that they feel kind of almost this paralyzation, like, how do I balance a bank account or write a check? How do I change a spare tire in a car? And just there's a way that churches and schools, by teaching life skills, can get involved. I've taught seminars on writing. I've been privileged to publish 20 books, and I talk about writing and how to get published and how to even start by writing blog articles. And there's so many things. I teach a class on how to succeed in college. Even if you think you couldn't do the work, how you can. It's not so much intellect, but it's discipline. And you get involved, you're imparting positive skills, and suddenly, and it's very quickly, the hope gets a fresh wind, an adrenaline shot of hope. Wow, there is something I want to do with my life. And I know this might sound kind of grandiose and lofty, but no, one life at a time. If I can help even one young person feel good about who they are and be enthused about the future, I mean, that's a good day's work.
I definitely agree with you.
And, everybody has a goal. There are people that want to be a journalist. I mean, I think about you and how you've given your life to help people and inform people. Journalism is a great service. And, there are a lot of kids. In our camps, they'll say, who knows what you want to do? And it's amazing if you want an icebreaker, start the conversation. A surprising number of young people that I've talked with, and I'm thinking of a camp we did this summer. We had quite a number of inner city kids, but they want to be journalists.
Yep.
And what a wonderful aspiration that is, And everybody watching this program right now has a journey and a story and a skill set that they can impart. And that's a legacy, It
is. And the power of their narrative is so God-given because each one has an individual gift that they've received from God. And the fact that you're there to help mentor them and introduce them to their better selves. I always have a habit of saying good, better, best, never let it rest. take your good and make it better, and make your better and make it best. And that's what you're doing for the youth of America. And Alex, I'm glad you came by to tell us this. And next time you're doing those camps and you need a journalist to come help, I'll be right there. I love talking to youth about their gifts in journalism and the power of their storytelling, because if I can help them understand that there's hope in America, because they can be the storytellers of hope, that's a good day. That's a good day.
You can count on it. I'm going to be calling you.
That's a good day. That wasn't for me to make a plug for me,
sure.
But I just love what you're doing.
Well, and I love what you all are doing. And hey, you know what? We're all the generation that can restore America.
That's good, my friend. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you. Alex, thank you. In closing tonight, we leave you with a final word from renowned author Dr. Os Guinness, who delivered this message of hope to America during the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit.
He's the great-great-great-grandson of Arthur Guinness, the Dublin brewer. Dr. Os Guinness was born in China during World War II, where his parents were medical missionaries. A witness to the climax of the Chinese Revolution in 1949, that he was expelled along with other foreigners in 1951 and returned to Europe, where he was educated in England. Oz has written or edited more than 30 books, and I personally recommend Last Call for Liberty and 0 Hour, which details how Americans are approaching the 0 hour for the Republic and our distinctive view of ordered freedom. Please help me welcome to the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, Dr. Os Guinness.
Now, I love the fact that your summit is Pray, Vote, Stand. So let me make some remarks on the praying side and the standing side. We need, across the West today, and certainly in this country, a great awakening and revival. We need leadership across the country at every single level. And the last thing I'll mention, we need to be people of hope. When things are bad, it's easy to critique. I do a fair amount of it myself, and I'm sure we all do. But every critique has to be ending with hope.
In my America, there is no left or right. We're all on common ground. Darkness gives way to light. In my America, you give more than you take. And when someone has lost their way, you lend them a hand and say, we are a family, together you and me, agreeing to disagree, but still live in harmony. The dream that gives hope to us is as strong as it ever was. United we stand, divided we fall. That's my America.
America and my America.
United we stand, divided